Welcome, everybody. I am Sally Arkell-Boles, and I am in the podcast Sally Speaks podcast. And today I'm really, really excited because as your host today, this is something that's near and dear to my heart. And I know that Dr. Carolyn Hoffman, who's a naturopathic doctor, is really going to help you to understand a lot more about what's really going on in your body, but also some of the things that she's discovered over the years as she's developed her practice. And it's in 30 countries. So that was one of the first questions I asked her when I talked to her, because I was so intrigued. And I wanted to know if she was only able to practice in her own country. And now I know it's over 30 countries already. And that is really exciting because most practitioners, as we know, we need to work with within our country. So I'm excited about this. So let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Carolyn Hoffman. So we're calling this particular episode Harnessing Your Inner Doctor to Own Your Health. I love that piece of it. So really dynamic because most of us don't own our own health. We count on other people to help us with that. So I'm really excited about this. But she has been in the field of natural health for over 20 years. And she's a certified board traditional naturopathic doctor, certified natural health professional, and has advanced training as a Loomis digestive health specialist. Her additional training and skills include a long list of modalities, including QEEG, neurointegration, lymphatic detoxification, and quantum healing. She's owned and operated several functional medicine practices and was a guest lecturer on nutrition for undergraduate nursing studies at James Madison University. She's a member of the Society of Redox Biology and Medicine, and she serves on the Asia Medical Professionals Board. Her clients span, like we talked about earlier, 30 countries, and she frequently speaks on the role of personal ownership in health and longevity. So welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Sally. It's so much fun to be with you.
It is fun to be with you too, because I know your background as well. But what made you become a naturopath?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I kind of feel like I have two lives. The first half of my life was actually in a totally different field in professional dance, both as a professional ballet dancer and also working in the professional field of teaching. And that kind of navigated through some injuries that led me to not being able to work in that field anymore. I'd had a car accident, I'd injured my spine, and I was suffering really badly, and people didn't have any solutions for me. I think I have to say that I was blessed that one of the solutions to fuse my spine actually chose not to be a solution at all. And they said, no, we can't do this. It's actually going to make it worse. But you can just go live with physical therapy for the rest of your life. That was kind of it. And I was thinking, well, I don't really have a life. I'm just constantly limping along in a huge amount of pain. I mean, I really couldn't do much. I was going from practitioner to practitioner to try to help just keep me moving through the day. And if I picked up anything for any length of time, my whole back would go into spasm and it would take me days to get out of that. But the long and short of it was, I was very allopathically oriented. Dancers are all about orthopedic surgeons and physical therapists and things like that. I think things have changed. When I was in that field in the 70s and 80s, we weren't really into all of these other things that we embrace in our lives nowadays. We're a lot more intelligent as human beings. We don't have to be dancers to know that there are ways to train muscles in different ways that just weren't part of life back then. But I really put my faith in the medical profession. But they had no solutions for me. So along the line, my husband interconnected with someone who, oddly enough, worked at UVA in the OR department. He was into alternative health. He was actually exploring the benefits of magnetic therapy and shared this with my husband. I thought they were totally nuts. I was really kind of skeptical. So you've got to be kidding me here. But the long and short of the journey was that when I finally kind of overcame my skepticism a little bit and got to embrace some of this technology, over the next 6 or 8 months, I finally recovered my health.
Wow.
And all of those things that I was suffering nonstop and all that level of pain and discomfort. And I will tell you that the sad thing was, when they said to me, you can't dance anymore and you really can't teach anymore and you shouldn't become pregnant, I had just got pregnant at the age of 40 for the first time.
Wow.
But carrying my baby was not part of my life at that point. So I kind of recovered everything. And then it made me think, well, if I can get better and it's not through drugs and things like that, you know, then other people need to know, right? That the body can actually heal that way. And so this started a long journey for me, which was really more personal in the beginning. I started finding people that were teaching things that I was fascinated in terms of cancer, whole food, you know, raw foods, thermography. And I was traveling all over the place trying to connect with people that just made me curious and made me want to learn. But I guess we're kind of brought to things sometimes in the way we are. You know, I'd had a background in anatomy and physiology through school and through college, and of course, kinesiology with teaching dance. So I had this understanding, but just not the way it was in the ways of natural health. But this kind of got me going with sharing with people. And then they kept asking me, well, how do you know what you know? I was like, okay, let's go get some qualifications here. So, you know, people can understand where my knowledge is coming from, because I was kind of all over the shop learning whatever fascinated me. And so that took me through initially just natural health training. And then I became super excited about enzyme therapy and digestive health, because if we don't have a good gut function, nothing else is going to happen from there. And then that just meandered me through to becoming a board certified naturopathic doctor. But, you know, all of those things that you listed are journeys in time for me, because they've come from a need within the family to look at modalities that could help my family, and then of course can help other people.
I think that's such an interesting story, and it must have been devastating as being a professional dancer to all of a sudden have your career stop as well. And so to be able to embrace that must have been a big challenge, in addition to all the pain you were in.
Yeah, I think I've said this to so many people, you know, that was very much, I mean, I had the ideal life as far as I was concerned. And part of that is because it was so satisfying to work with people and help develop their potential as dancers, help, you know, see them flourish and go where they want to go. And so it was both my life and my enjoyment and my purpose and my future and everything, but it was also my identity. So when I lost that, it was like, okay, who am I?
Right.
You know, who am I? What is my future about if I can't do this thing that I thought was going to be there forever?
And I think that's a big piece of a lot of people today, because there used to be a time where you would go to your job and you would stay in that profession for your whole life. And today it's a lot different than that, where, you know, we've built up to a certain level in a company, but then we may have made a choice to move over to something else, or somebody else made a choice for us to take on something different. And you do lose that identity. And so that in itself is a big challenge for a lot of people. But is it the healthy alternatives that you found that helped to heal that, as because you found a way to contribute back to the people that you had worked with before?
Yeah, and to me, it's a different version of what I did in the teaching field. In other words, you know, that's so why I'm so passionate about sharing information, because I'm kind of this natural teacher. It's like, if I know it, you need to know it, because maybe it's going to help you. And why I talk about the personal ownership piece, I think, is so important, you know, to be able to own our health, not to constantly be requiring to go to see your regular doctor, and not even a naturopath. I mean, I don't consider it a success if I have a client who constantly needs to come in and see me. I want to help dive in and find, well, what's the root of the challenge here? You know, why is it we can't get from this side of the fence to the other side of the fence? And be in a space where, for me, it was about freedom. Yes. Right? Not keep on having to see my neurological chiropractor 3 times a week, or my massage therapist who was working on me, or whatever it is, because I think a lot of us, when we're searching for solutions that are not drug-based, we're trying to find what's the answer, right? What's the key to why we have the source of stress? What's the key to the root of the problem? And I know, because I've watched it for myself and I've watched it for my clients, people spend a lot of money searching for those solutions. And to me, if you can get to the point where you understand enough and you can find the root of the issue, and you can move to this space of energy and freedom, right, and optimal living, that's the power. in being able to own that space. I don't think it's about how long we live, but I think it's about how well we live while we live.
Yes,
That's
I
the
love
most
that.
important key.
Yeah, I love that. And I think so many of us get sidetracked when we do have medical issues or problems with our mobility and things along that type of line that prevent us from living the life we really want to live. Right. And as we're aging, especially, when we have children, grandchildren that we want to participate with and continue to be there for them and have that energy level and that mobility to be able to really work with them. I think that's really an important element of our life, as opposed to, maybe our forefathers or grandfathers and grandmothers, sort of just accepted that and didn't have the options that we have today that you're being able to talk to about. So is that why you're calling yourself the Energy ND?
Yeah, when I was thinking about, I had sold a practice, a functional medicine practice. I had a partnership in there, and I wanted to just go back to kind of focusing a little bit more on the things that I was doing. I do a lot of acute EEG neurointegration. Why? Because I'd had a traumatic brain injury from a car accident in 2007. So I was kind of out of my life for about 2 years as well in this journey. And I found that, and it helped rehab me. So of course, once again, okay, if it can help me, it can help other people. But I wanted to really focus on that because the gut and the brain are so intrinsically tied together. But at the basis of it all, every cell has to be producing energy for us to do anything, whether it's for functions to happen within the cells adequately, whether it's to be able to detect when things go wrong and help the body to heal. That is the inner doctor process that goes on. And whether it's, to have enough energy to fuel all the activities that we want to accomplish every day. I think a lot of people end up leaving things on the table because they just don't have the sustained energy from cellular health to be able to meet everything that they'd love to do. And as you talked about, do you want to play pickleball at the end of the day, but you're too tired, so you sit on the couch, right? Do you want to run around with your kids? Do you want to still keep playing tennis? I mean, whatever that is for our life, we have to have energy. And it's no different than a car. And if the car isn't, if the engine isn't turning over and it's not producing enough energy, then we're not going anywhere. And the cells are exactly the same. So to me, it's kind of interesting because everything is about energy, whether it's literally electrical energy within the cells, whether it's emotional energy. If we think about the energy of love is 525 hertz. It has a frequency, right? Depression has a frequency, anger has a frequency, fear has a frequency, and everything impacts our overall health. And that's another reason why I feel very strongly about helping people not identify with diseases. Because we're really putting an energetic frequency in there. The body's smart and says, okay, you're thinking this, so the subconscious says, okay, this is what you want, I'll deliver it.
Yes. Yeah, I'm a big believer of that as well. And I teach that as well within my practice of just mentoring and coaching people, because whatever we focus on is what we get, and that whatever we feed into our conscious mind will go directly to our subconscious and just be accepted. And so I'm curious about people with hereditary diseases, as far as whether they can also access the energy to be able to change as well, or through their diet and your practice. What would you do with that as an example?
That's epigenetics. The control is with us first and foremost, right? Every single thing we put in our body in terms of the foods that we eat or drink is going to determine how healthy those cells are going to be. And I often think that we might have a little bit more attention paid to what we do if our body screamed at us as fast as a car would do. I mean, I don't know if you've ever looked on YouTube, but there are people who play around with how long will a car keep running if I put Coca-Cola in the gas tank, right? The car says pretty quickly, this is not a good food source for me, right? But as the human body is so darn adaptable and so brilliant that it goes, okay, you're really not feeding me anything that's helpful. I work it out. I've got to get rid of what I don't need. But there's a compensation. There's a price we pay for that. So I love the fact that at the end of the day, we have total control. And I say that to clients. It's like, it doesn't matter where we're at. every single day we're replacing cells. And in 7 years, we'll literally replace everything at least once, if not multiple times. So the potential is, if we feed ourselves better nutrition, if we feed and rebuild the energy source of the cells, right, we have the potential to be completely different.
Wow.
And we're designed to heal. We're not designed to promote sickness, but sadly, in this day and age, I think when I started coming into this field back 25 years ago now, you know, nutrition and taking nutritional supplements was still, people were pretty proactive if they were in that space. Most people were not in that space. We're now in an environment that is so toxic. You know, we're bombarded all the time with pesticides and chemicals and toxins. Our food is so depleted. Even if we're, you know, people will say, well, I eat organic all the time and I eat fresh food, but it may have traveled for 3 to 4 weeks and be sitting on the shelves. It could still be organic, but it has no vital energy. And that's why fresh food has a vital energy that restores the cells. And so we have that power in what we think and how we act, and the exercise that we do and the food that we give ourselves and the supplements that we use, which are necessary now to make up for what's not in the food, to create something different. You come to the genetics piece. You mentioned, you know, genetics. And so when we hear people say, well, you know, my grandfather had this issue and my father had this issue, you know, my uncle's got it, you know, and I'm developing it. And diabetes is one of those things that kind of trails through. That's a sign that our epigenetic system is downregulated. It's giving out wrong information. We can change that. We absolutely can change that.
Wow. How?
Part of it is we need to look at ourselves, and we're all unique. I think that's one of the challenges people don't always realize. You know, you can look at a supplement, for example. A couple of things with the labeling on supplements. The amounts in those supplements are not therapeutic amounts. The amounts in there are literally only designed to kind of avoid the disease that they produce if we have a nutrient deficiency. But therapeutic quantities often have to be a lot higher. So sometimes people get frustrated because they're taking multiple supplements, but they're not taking therapeutic quantities that can make changes for them. And so that's where, you know, you work with somebody who can really understand what is a therapeutic amount that will actually have the right outcome. And then we need to look at the mitochondrial function. How do we rebuild the actual source point of how the cells produce energy? Because without that, we can throw all the nutrition in the world that we want. If that's not regulated strongly enough, the body doesn't really have the capacity to use it. And I think that's where people get frustrated. I'm sure you probably know people. I know, I've seen them in my practice. They come in with bags full of supplements and they're fed up with swallowing pills because they're throwing too much stuff at the system that's not working at the most intrinsic level. And so what we do is we work to rebuild that signaling base, and then we look at what is the essential things that they need so that we can put this partnership together and actually get the real uptake out of it, and life changes.
That's very interesting, because it has become very much a supplements market. If you want health, go get your supplements and then you'll be healthy and eat fairly clean diet. And so that's what we're all led to believe, but we're not educated enough, I believe, to really know the impact of what we're doing. And like you said, we're not getting the right amounts of the supplement probably in the form that we need it either. So I want to go back to the gut brain health piece of that, because I've been exposed to that recently in the last couple of years about the brain gut axis. So can you just explain a little bit about why that's so critical to our health?
Absolutely. I think there's been a lot of talk about the gut is the second brain. In many ways, I think of it as the first brain, because if it's neutral and nothing's happening, you know, you haven't got things that are going to interfere. But everything that we put in our gut has to be digested and then broken down and assimilated. And I think that people think that just because they eat something is going to deliver what we want from it. I became fascinated by the fact that, you know, enzymes are the workers, the catalysts that make things happen when we consume foods, that produce the energy in the cells, right, that fuel the body. But if we have disruption in the gut, we are automatically going to have disruption in the brain. There is just no way to get away from that. Part of the reason we know why is because we produce about 80% of the serotonin that fuels this calming activity in the brain, but it's in the gut. So if you have inflammation in the gut, you know, you're eating foods that are breaking down. Glyphosates are just notorious, and we all know those that sprayed all over the GMO foods that we have now. They bury in themselves in the lining, and they disrupt and they stop us absorbing nutrition. So you can be taking tons of supplements, but it's just not getting delivered. So we have to work to, you know, eliminate the things that are really causing the problems. And when I do testing with people, I can do really interesting testing that shows us if we do, for instance, an integrated UA for up 24 hours, we can actually look at everything the body's doing with everything that you eat. What it's absorbing, what it's not absorbing, what it can't get rid of, what is creating toxins. And then we get this picture of, well, what's actually happening below the surface, right? Because we just don't get to dial in any other way. And then with other testing, we can look at energy fields of the body, right? Because if the cells are healthy, they're producing a specific energy in a field that interacts in the right way to maintain health. But when we have damage in cells, we have miscommunication. That miscommunication could be tons of damage in the lungs, so we can't breathe, or it could be problems in the heart, so we have racing heart, or we have skipping heart, or we have problems in that way. It could be damage in the joints, right? So we've got a lot of inflammation and problems with our joints, and we're not mobile. But it all boils down to, if we have a healthy cell, and we have 70 to 100 trillion of them, then that area is going to be healthy too, right? And we want to keep that healthy. So we want to find where's the breakdown at an energetic level, and an emotional level, a nutritional level, a mechanical level. I kind of laugh because I love the acronym MEN. And I once did a talk that said men are the problem. And I'll dial that back. What it actually stands for is M is for mechanical. So if we have a mechanical issue, we're stressing our system. Our system needs more fuel. It's running faster. So if you're giving nutrition to the body, but it's running faster than it should, you're not going to impact it in the right way. So we have to get that right. We have to get the emotional piece right, which drives so much. If we're throwing nutrition at the body, but the mechanics are wrong and the emotions wrong, we're still not going to get the outcome. So with this mechanical, emotional, nutritional triad, and we have to discover, you know, what's not working, how is it not connected fully? And when we can bring balance back into that, then you kind of open up this pathway that the body is able to do what it's designed to do, which is heal.
That's amazing, because I think that's a big piece of what I've noticed as well. When my gut health is really strong, my energy is up, my clarity in my thoughts, everything is just fully wired, right? And so interesting when you're talking about depression. So the serotonin levels will rise when your gut health is happier, and then you probably won't experience the same amount of depression. Okay.
Absolutely. That comes from a genetic pathway, inflammatory signaling pathway, EGR1. The first domino of that is serotonin. So if you have gut problems, you're going to have serotonin problems. There's just no way. So therefore, you're going to have a brain dysfunction and emotional instability that isn't constant and supportive. So yeah, we can make changes that way. So we've got to look again, where's the root of the problem and how do we change that?
Well, I think today, with all of the fear, worry, and doubt that's out there, there's a lot of people that are allowing their thoughts to really affect them in a negative perspective, but yet there's a solution that we can look into with our gut health.
Yeah, you make a good point. I mean, stress is an enormous burden nowadays, in the last few years in particular, right? I mean, as you say, with the fear and the worry, and everybody's been through this huge amount of anxiety, and it's affected some people a lot more than others, most definitely. But despite that, whether it's emotional stress, whether it's nutritional stress, whether it's physical stress, you know, whether you're working hard, whether you've got abuse around you, or you're not in a good environment that makes you feel happy, all of this is impacting the health of our cells. And the key to whether we can adapt enough is whether the cell has enough integrity to resist that. Our cells are there and designed to resist and to restore. And that needs to be going on, 24/7. But when we can't resist it and we get out of balance, then of course we end up with something that has a dis-ease name to it.
Exactly. So now, I don't know if this is something that you work with, but can you talk to me about telomeres?
Yeah, interesting. So that's so part of the DNA has these chromosomal pieces within every cell, and they are something that replicates out. We need to be making new cells. Within it, they encapsulate these things called telomeres. And the telomeres, what we're seeing in science is that the longer they are, the longer our natural lifespan is going to be, because they're more resilient in the duplication process. And we want to make sure that we're not allowing that telomere to get oxidized by inflammation. So this is where our diet plays a piece. This is where our mental function plays a piece, our emotional piece. Remember, all of that can cause inflammation. And science is very clear, right? A disease produces inflammation, and excess inflammation produces disease. So it's this cycle that goes around. And so there are a lot of things in the B vitamin range in particular that will do things to help protect that telomere length. So there's nutrients that we can use to help protect and maybe even extend the telomeres when they break over and they duplicate out. Instead of being clipped off and getting shorter, which means we're going to have a shorter lifespan, then there's something called telomerase, which is an enzyme that we can actually promote to actually help extend those telomeres and therefore keep us looking healthier and living longer.
Awesome. Thank you. Because I've heard a lot about telomeres as well for the last few years. And, I've heard that you can have them grow longer again. And so I was just curious as to what that would be. So now when you're working with your clients, what can they expect?
Yeah, I'm not very much of a cookie cutter person, right? Because to me, I want to represent the fact that, we may all be human beings, but we're all totally unique. And so our journeys need to be tailored to what we need. And so I think that that's kind of cool. And really in the same way that we would look in medicine triangulates, right? It looks for data in 3 different arenas to be able to cross those pieces of information and be able to dial down in a pathway. I'm doing it in the same way, but not with drugs. Right? And so I love to do the urine analysis is great because we get to look at the body chemistry and we can see where are those stresses. I just was working with somebody just over a month or so ago, and she hasn't been able to sleep for 30 years. She's done a huge journey with an awful lot of different people doing problems. She's on a huge amount of supplementation, but wasn't getting where she wanted to get to. And we talked about this and she said, well, that sounds fascinating. And what it did was to dial down and really highlight for her all these issues she had. And we just made one simple change and bingo, 30 years of struggling with that is changing, and she's sleeping for the first time, which is amazing. So that's a tool, right? I like to do a very in-depth analysis of diet and lifestyle. What's your epigenetic histories in there? So I can kind of dial down, what are you likely to have a weakness in? Just because we eat food doesn't mean that we are naturally adapted to absorb it. And you're missing proteins, not because you might not be eating them, but your body can't actually absorb and assimilate them. Are you missing carbohydrates? Are you missing fats? And from that, we can see very specific throw out of symptoms that come from being a lack in a certain food group. And so we can look at, is it your diet that's the problem? Is it your inability to digest it? Can you just not detoxify it? Is it impacting your immune system? Is it impacting your neurological system, your endocrine system, especially for women, right? All the endocrine issues that we get with all of those things that go with the gut and the brain, the foggy thinking, the bloating, all of those. And I like to do the scanning. I like to look at the human body field and kind of see, where's the damage to the information system, the communication there. And then we can piece together what's going to be appropriate for them. Because I'm a great believer that it's fine if you have a whole bunch of things, but if it doesn't work for someone's lifestyle, they're probably not going to engage in it, right? They have to, we've got to find something that works for us. And so the same thing doesn't necessarily work for someone. I mean, if we are somebody who hates to swallow tablets, you probably would loathe to be told you've got 5 supplements to take. But if we can do things through liquids, then maybe that's the route for them. So I like to work with my clients and look at what are their goals, what are their expectations, when we're coming with supporting the body to do what it's designed to do, we have to have realistic understanding that the body is going to be doing the work. We're giving it the tools and the resources, but it's going to take its time to do it. And there's no magic bullet with, 30 days, we suddenly get rid of something we've had for 5 or 6 years. In natural health, we have a lot of a belief in 90 days is the base point, and a month for every year that we've had some kind of named condition. That doesn't mean you won't feel good before then, but in fact, the cleaning out process, the complete healing process is longer than just this instantaneous thing. And I do think that sometimes people are not always realistic. If they're frustrated with medicine, they suddenly come to this and they feel like, you should take one supplement and it should solve the problem overnight. It's just not the way the human body works.
So now, on a typical client, like an average client, how much time would you be partnering with them in your process? Like, is it are you working with them for a year? Are you working with them for 3 months? Are you always working with them? like most of us would have a family doctor that we would go to on a regular basis. Do you operate that same way, or what's your operation?
Yeah, I like to start with at least a 3-month period, because there's not a lot that we can really achieve in that. So certainly the 3 to 4 months is a baseline point for me. I recognize that for some people it's going to be a 6 months before we work their way through. I worked with a woman who's had thyroid issues all her life, and she's seen lots of people. She's been trying to get off thyroid medication. She was losing chunks of her hair and her eyebrows, and the weight was a real challenge. She didn't want to be on thyroid meds, and it took us 8 months, but over that period of time we transitioned her to being able to get off her thyroid meds. And a year out, she sends me her stats and she says, I'm still good, all my blood work is still good and I'm not using it. And we'll talk if we need to over those things. I work with people according to what their need is. As I said, people use me until they can become independent, right? That's the goal. That's like, how do we find what you need to do to get to where you can be in a good place, where you can live your life optimally without having to feel like you've always got to have appointments. But, we'll do an extensive one-on-one to go through the complete health history. There's forms and in-depth analysis that bring me back reports, and we put all of that together, and then we work on a plan, and then we'll certainly check in at the end of the first week and at the end of the first month, and then monthly therein, and any other kind of quick conversations. We might be doing texting for those kinds of things. If they have a question, I can answer that quickly.
Yeah, well, I think it's really important to be able to have the ability to get to that place like your client did, of feeling freedom, like it's still working. I'm getting better every day. And I think that's ultimately what we're looking for in our lives, is that freedom of health to be able to enjoy everything about our life. So, for me, whatever it would take to get me to my results so that I could live my life the way I choose to. And like you said, every 7 years we're regenerating. So, what 7 years in a lifespan to give you so much more in what you can have in your life. So I think, if anybody that's watching that's thinking about, oh, well, how long does it take? I think the holistic approach that you're using with the energy that you bring forward and all of the different diagnostic tools that you have and the results that you're getting really speak to the quality of work that you get to do. And I'm sure it really makes you feel happy to be able to see your clients have so much success, because at the end of the day, health is the only thing that we have. Without our health, we don't have much. And so
sickness is expensive.
Oh, it's very expensive these days. And we all believe that that's just a natural piece because we're taught that, right? Go to your doctor, get a pill, you'll be fine.
Right. Yeah, and I don't want people to kind of get a pill there and then take on 7 or 8 supplements and be tied to endless routines of, well, I've got to take this now and that now. That's not living either, right? That's not where we need to get to. But I think sickness is expensive in so many directions. It's expensive emotionally, physically. Maybe you can't work if you're sick, right? Maybe you can't contribute to your family life. You don't get to participate. There's so many definitions of expensive beyond simply the amount of money, but certainly prevention. You can't measure what you can't track. So you can't really measure prevention other than may we never know what we prevent. May we just stay healthy.
So now, as we've been talking, you've talked a lot about the different systems that we have and, the areas that we would really need to work on. But what about from a nutritional perspective? So from the foods that we're eating, what are your ideas on that? And what are you sort of guiding your clients on? I'm sure everybody's got a unique system and a unique plan that you're working with them on, but is the power of the nutrition, I think, is also a very important piece of it. So can you explain a little bit about what you offer? And
Yeah, I like people to be able to live a life that isn't dialed into, well, I've got to do this now and that now. The power is in food, whole food. I mean, and people have heard this so often, right? And if we think about the human body is not designed to actually consume anything other than fresh foods. Right? Things we may cook, yes, but we have to also understand that when we cook food, we actually destroy the enzyme properties. So the activity and the capacity that those foods are naturally built with. And if we eat a protein, it actually has protease already built in there because that's the enzyme that will break it down in the system. Carbohydrates are amylase and such like. When we cook food at over 108 degrees, we actually kill enzyme activity. So we have to be mindful, and I think that's what people don't really realize, is that you've taken away the natural activity of the food to be able to break itself down.
Oh, wow.
So now you're stressing your own digestive system, right? So now you're pulling from the body's resources to produce digestive enzymes to break down the food adequately. So a foundational thing for me would be, in terms of supplements, at least if you're cooking food on a regular basis, to have a digestive enzyme product that will then help break that food down adequately so we don't get putrefaction, we don't get intoxication going on, and we can really get the nutrients out to the tissue and benefit from what we're eating. But largely, of course, the most valuable food is raw foods, all of those kinds of things. And then again, fresh raw foods, right? Obviously your own, if you're growing them, is the most vital. Local farms are the next thing. But when we have the system that we have nowadays with food, even if it's organic, if it's traveling for 3 to 4 weeks, or for example, all tomatoes are picked when they're green, which actually means that they have no iron content in them whatsoever, because iron is made in the last 2 weeks on the vine.
Yeah.
Right. So this is where we begin to see these challenges with deficient foods. But, healthy, fresh foods, cooking from scratch. I was never raised in any other way, but just know that once something's in a packet and it can sit on the shelf, it's had its enzyme activity retarded for lifespan. So it's no longer food that the body recognizes. And although the body will try to handle it, there is again a compensation that takes place out of that. So, we will craft things if necessary for people. I mean, certain foods are more anti-inflammatory than others. And so that's an important piece. And we can kind of give structure to that to help people in a process of moving forward to embrace that more as their lifestyle.
Absolutely. That's incredible. I mean, I grew up on a farm when I was a little girl, and we had this massive garden back then, just massive. And each of us, there's 5 daughters and my mom and dad, and each of us daughters had our own little plot as well as the bigger plot. But you really can tell now when you actually have something that is fresh and it hasn't been imported and it's within, the local area, you can definitely tell the difference just in the taste. Because so many foods are kind of just, has a little bit of a taste, but not the true essence of what that fruit or vegetable would be like. So very interesting. And then what areas of natural health today are you interested in as you're moving forward? Because it sounds to me like you continue your education, and that's fabulous. And I really enjoyed our discussion, but I'm interested in knowing what you're doing now. What are you studying now?
Yeah, I'm really focused into the last 6 years in particular. I didn't realize I kind of stepped into this field of redox biology back in 2010. I was looking at nitric oxide, which is part of the redox function, and this is how the cells communicate. So there are these master molecules that basically are the language of every cell, and they give instructions for everything else to happen. So one of those things that can happen is nitric oxide, and if people are familiar with that, they'll know that it benefits cardiovascular disease. It expands the flexibility of our veins, for example, or our arteries. So I was doing testing back in 2010, but at that point, redox was not actually a named field. It was still oxidative stress. That was where science was at, thinking that inflammation is just this bad guy, right? It's going to cause damage left, right, and center. Now that science has developed so much that they realize that actually oxidative stress and initial signaling of inflammation literally is the only thing that calls the inner doctor, the healing, to happen. So I think of it as like the smoke alarm in our house, right? If the smoke alarm didn't go off, the house could burn down. This is really the equivalent with a redox signal. It sends up the initial little alarm, the 911, and then the body goes, okay, we got a problem, let's find the cell that's damaged, let's come in and actually do the things to heal. And there's a whole range of things that these signals do in terms of epigenetics, keeping that signaling accurate, repairing, healing, and adaptive response, which I think is really important, and where life has been for the last 2 years. Because if you had a very strong innate signaling immune system, you would have defended yourself very well over the last few years. So this is a kind of fascinating area for me, because it is, how do the cells talk? How do they find the problems? How do they call up the things that need to happen? Because they don't actually participate, they're just instructors, right? They're saying, we need this, you need to go here and do this, that, and the other. And then it's beautiful because it meshes perfectly with the materials which comes into the nutrition to enable us to build the healthy cells. And I've seen just different approaches that have come out of the healing journey that we've gone through, when we can actually really upregulate way the cells speak, and then we can feed it exactly what the cells need.
Wow. That's very interesting. I'm just so intrigued by everything that you're talking about today, because it's sort of been a passion of mine to really dig in, the older I'm getting, to be able to really see how to preserve my health and improve my health for the next 40 years. Right?
I would agree with you. One of the things that I saw when I first started in this journey that caught my attention and made me realize the power just of then thinking of supplementation back 30 odd years ago, was that I saw some photos of twins. And this photo was of them in their 20s, and one of them had taken nutritional supplements through to their 40s, and one had not. And then there was the follow-up photo of them 20 years later, and the difference was so astonishing.
Wow. They
didn't look remotely like they were twins any longer. One looked at least 20 years older than the other one, and it was like, oh my gosh, So I wish I'd known what I'd known now when I was a dancer, because nobody was into any of this kind of thing. Nutrition, we didn't take supplements. I think I met one person who took some wheat germ, and I thought that was weird, because nobody else was doing it. Yeah. But it all speaks to your body is going to reward you for everything that you do to protect it. And I often will ask the question, if the car that you own now had to last you the rest of your life, what would you do differently?
Yeah, good question.
Right. This is the only body we're in, right? They might be able to replace certain things and all the rest of it, but we're built the way we're built for a reason. So when people say, well, I had my gallbladder out, and the doctors go, oh, you don't need it. You do need it. It was there for a reason. And just because you yank it out doesn't mean there's no consequence to that. They don't tell someone you need digestive enzymes for the rest of your life now, because you're going to be virtually incapable of degreasing your food when it comes out of your stomach. And if you don't degrease your food at that point, the digestion of protein and the stress you put on the immune system won't happen. So people don't understand this kind of cascade of what's going on. It's like saying in the car, well, we'll yank out the radiator and we don't need it. It's like, no, that's not going to work. So
I remember probably about 20 years or so ago, I had a similar issue come up, And they said the only thing was surgery or to have it removed. And I thought, no, I don't want to do that. So I went to a naturopath. Within a couple of months, she had been able to get me right back in line, no pain. I've never had any pain since. And that's over 20 years, right? So it takes us taking ownership for our health and the information that we're getting to be able to really understand that we can bring back that control to ourselves if it's important to us to have that health long term. And we do have choices. I think sometimes people think they don't have a choice. Their doctor puts them on a certain path and they pop into that path right away and they're doing this, and just following that direction. And I think that there's so many other alternatives today and experts like yourself that can really help so many people that are finding themselves in a situation where their body is reacting not to their best efforts right now. And what can they do differently just from working on with a professional like yourself that can really help them to be able to find some alternate solutions to what's being prescribed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I understand it. I think the challenge is, there's the authority sense, right, of the education of your doctor. And it's like, well, if you don't want to follow that, what do you do? And if you feel like you don't know what to do, you probably just feel like you're disempowered. So you just trust the authority and you follow their instructions. I guess for me, I've always realized after a while that, if you don't need surgery and you don't need a drug and a painkiller is not the solution, what are they going to give you? Because how many times have you walked in with an issue and you come out with nothing in your hand to solve it and no solution? And once that happened to me a few times, I was like, well, hang on, why am I going to the doctor? Because, I don't need surgery, I don't need a medicine, I don't need a drug, but I've still got the problem and they've given me no answer. So it is challenging, and I understand it. My mother went through pancreatic, bladder and breast cancer. She was metastatic stage 4. And that's a scary diagnosis, right, for people. And yet I meet plenty of people who don't want to do the chemotherapy and radiation, but they go for the appointments. And I've had the conversations and said, well, you have to think very carefully, because if you don't want what they're going to tell you, you're going to have to defend your answer, right? You're not speaking in the same space. They're not going to understand your reasons for not wanting it. Neither are they going to agree with it, because legally they're not allowed to. They've got to protect themselves. So sometimes it can be, if you don't want chemotherapy and radiation, then why go for that conversation? Why not just do whatever it is or find someone who can help you to do whatever it is that you want to? My mother was one of those. She wasn't going to have the pancreas out when we talked about it. We looked at the difference between chemotherapy on breast cancer. The survival is 83% at 5 years without chemotherapy, and it's 84% with. And you think of all the downside. So she was like, I'm not spending any of my time, whatever I've got left. And they gave her like about 2 months doing any of those things. And so I was like, okay, I got to find out what to do. And so, I was like deep dives into things. But I think it's also important to recognize that they're educated, and you have to respect their education. And I'm not saying we don't need a drug. There's plenty of times when we have to have them. But do we have a deficiency of Lipitor? No. But it was helping her to just not accept that and to find solutions. I mean, she lived 7 years and she still never died of any of the cancers. We got her back to very close to near normal on everything, and she lived a very healthy life. So I've watched so many experiences in my own life where people will say, well, this is what's going to happen. I was like, no, it isn't. It doesn't have to be that way. But of course, you've got to do the work. And it's not just, well, I'll take one supplement. When you've got chronic things, you've got chronic reasons and you've got chronic conditions, and that's all going to take time. And that's where it does become expensive, because you've now got a lot of money to try to do what we hope would never have happened if we've been proactive in every decision in our life as we go forward. So everything that we do for ourselves has a consequence, and so but everything we do is our choice too.
Absolutely. I love that, because we do have choices today. And I think that's one of the things that we might not have had a long time ago, was to have other alternatives that we could really go to, that we could trust, that were educated like you are, and that were able to guide us on the symptoms, but also to do a much deeper dive than you might get in other areas, because or with other practitioners, because deep dive into really figuring out each person that you're working with as to what their root cause is going to be the gem. It's going to be the gem at the end of the day.
And you're right. And this field has changed so much since I've been in 25. I mean, science is growing so much. So that's the beautiful piece of it, that you can be in this naturopathic place and understand and respect the principles of how the body is designed to function, and the principles of what life is meant to support us with sunshine and water and air and exercise and good food and good sleep. I mean, and mental function and emotional capacity. Those are the healing principles, but you can now blend it with what science is showing us about different things and really tweak how you get the use out of it. And I think that's the powerful piece.
I think we're blessed to be living today where we have all of that information for sure.
Yeah.
So now, how can people reach you? And I understand that you have something that you're offering to our listeners today.
I am. I thought it would be fun to offer them the quantum-based scanning that I do. So I have a link. If you want to go to drcarolynhoffman.info, you'll be linked into my scanning system there. You can create an account and actually do a scan of yourself. And the report that you'll get will give you a complete look at one section of this, which will focus on what I thought would be fun is our life purpose, our choice point, our journey. You know, what are the things that are blocking you from maybe finding your life's purpose, being able to live with passion? What are the emotional things that are tripping you up? And there's a lot of information in there. You'll get to see, you know, is this a minor priority? Is it a major priority for your body because energetically it's out of balance? And within there, there's also a 4-part video system that you can actually access that talks about the choice point and the process of energy and dysfunction. And along with it, there's also an ebook that you can download. So I thought that that would be fun for them to have.
Oh, awesome. That's amazing. Thank you so much for offering that. I can't wait to share that because I think there's going to be so many people that want to get in there and try this out and get that scan for sure. So I will post all of that in our podcast so that you'll have the links to that if you missed what Dr. Carolyn Hoffman shared with you. But is there anything else that you would love to share today?
I think just to say to people, you know, you're designed to heal. Have faith in that, and just get supported. If you don't know what it is that you need to do, find somebody. You know, maybe you want to work personally and directly with someone locally. There's so many great resources out there now, but just know that you have the power to control your life. Right? You have the power to change your future. Your epigenetics are not written in stone. Okay, and that's the beautiful thing about this, and that may we never know what we prevent, I think, is probably the most powerful statement.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing today. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to work with you and to be able to talk to you today and learn so much about what you're doing for people. And remember, it's around the globe. She's working in 30 different countries right now. So if you do want to reach out to Dr. Carolyn Hoffman, we'll put up her website as well. And I'm sure if you just Google her name, you'll find her everywhere. But thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sally. It's super wonderful to be with you.
Thank you.